Good day, students. I'm Sauma Kanjengo, and I'm going to take you through Introduction to Educational Research. Welcome to the April, August, and November 2020 exam-based presentation for Introduction to Educational Research. We wish you all the best in your studies. Be motivated and study hard for this course and achieve the qualification you want. Examination instructions. Questions should be answered on the question paper. The mark allocation is a guideline for the time needed to answer each question. Write neatly and legibly. Observe the thinking level of the verb in each question. No unauthorized material, notes, technical devices may be in your possession. Cheating in the examination will result in a failing grade. Now, for you to excel in your assignment as well as in your examination, you need to have an understanding of the verbs that are used. There are a number of verbs, and they are in your study guide on page 9 to 10. Some of them are defined. You should be able to define. What we mean by define, when you are defining, you give the precise, brief meaning of something. You should be able to compare, which means to indicate similarities and differences of phenomena regarding particular criteria. You should draw a conclusion emphasizing the similarities. And very often, a table format is used to compare phenomena. Contrast, what does it mean? It means show how things are different or opposite regarding a particular criteria. Describe, what does it mean? It means to provide detailed features of an issue or stages of a process in a logical sequence, using headings and proper sentences. Discuss, what does it mean? When a question comes in the examination and it says discuss, what is it that you are expected to do? You are expected to give a clear description and then argue about features by pointing out positive and negative features, and then you arrive at a conclusion. You should also be able to explain. What do we mean by explaining? You describe something and indicate relationships between things, making clear the reasons as well as the examples. For you to excel in your assignment as well as in your examination, you should be able to analyze. What does it mean to analyze? You examine information in detail to discover the main ideas or patterns or components or relationships. You show why they are important and how components are related and what theories they reflect. Determine, what does it mean when you are asked to determine? You use the information that you are given to work out the answer. Sometimes the question might say distinguish or differentiate. What is it that is expected from you? You are expected to describe two phenomena which things according to relevant criteria. You point out clearly the differences between the two sets. Outline. You are expected to give an overview of and indicate the main features of something in a concise and systematic manner. Sometimes you'll be asked to summarize, which basically means give a brief account of the essence of a matter through the main ideas. Or you might be asked to examine, which means you need to identify detailed features of something. Now, dear students, you need to read and understand the theory and application of research. You need to develop the theories, understanding, values, and competencies with regard to educational research. And as I said earlier, you need to study the table of verbs that will be used in the examination as well as in your assignment, and those verbs are on page 9 up to page 10. So go through the verbs and try to have an understanding of what these verbs mean, or what is it that is expected should you be given a question with any of those verbs. Now, after you finish this module, there are learning outcomes that are expected. So upon completion of this module, you should be able to explain basic research concepts and characteristics. You should be able to discuss the characteristics of qualitative and quantitative research. You should be able to explain the design and implementation of data gathering tools. You should also be able to explain techniques for data analysis. You should be able to explain the components of a research proposal. Topics. Now, as you study and prepare for your examination, there are certain topics that you must make sure that you understand them thoroughly. So you must understand them thoroughly. The first one, you should be able to define the concepts. There are concepts that appear in your study guide. Go through those concepts and understand them thoroughly. You should be able to compare the qualitative and quantitative research designs. You should be able to explain the purposes of an educational research. So you need to know them and also be able to explain them. You should be able to know the functions of literature review. You should be able to know steps to be considered when planning for data collection. You should master the steps in formulation of an educational research problem. You are expected to know different purposes of research. You are expected to know how questionnaires are evaluated. You should know the 5 research dimensions of matter, and you should be able to give practical examples and also relationships. You should know the steps or components of a research proposal. You should know steps or subheadings of a research study. And you should be able to explain data analysis in qualitative and quantitative designs. Now, what are some of those words that you need to know? So here I'm only giving you some of the words. I'm not saying these are the only words. There are other words. There are other words, there are other concepts that are used in this module. But these are some of those words that you need to know when you are preparing for examination. Be it your May examination, be it your August examination, be it your November examination. You must make sure that you can define these concepts. You should be able to discuss their characteristics, and you should be able to give practical examples. You should be able to know what is research, action research, research design, research hypothesis, what is qualitative research, what is data analysis, what is plagiarism, what is reliability and validity in research, what is surveys. When we are talking about epistemological dimension, what are we talking about? What do we mean by research ethics? What do we mean by ethnography? Research methodology? empirical research, scientific knowledge, research proposal, quantitative research, mixed methods, theory, research paradigm, literature review, ontological dimension, model, mean, mode, median. So these are just some of the concepts. There are other concepts, but dear students, make sure that you know all these concepts that I just mentioned. I don't know in which examination they will be asked, but as a prepared student, I advise you that you know all these concepts for your examination. Whichever examination, make sure that you are able to define these concepts, make sure that you're able to discuss their characteristics, and make sure that you are able to provide practical examples. Now, there are some questions that you need to prepare on. For instance, when you are preparing for examination, be it your May or be it your August, be it your November examination, there are some things that you need to know. For instance, you should be able to compare the qualitative and quantitative research design. These designs, you need to know them and you should be able to compare them. So you should know their characteristics of both research designs. You should be able to elaborate how the following words are used in each of these research designs. Scientific methods, view of human behavior, most common research objectives, focus, interest, nature of observation, nature of reality, form of data, data analysis, results, and form of final report. One of these requires a narrative report. The other one requires a statistical report. Which one is which? So you should know all this. There is a table in your study guide on page 43. Go through that table and make sure that you understand the differences between the two research designs. As you prepare for examination, whichever examination, whether it's May or it's August or it's the November examination, you should make sure you know all these questions. The first question, or one of the questions, is that Barbie 2001 in your module, identify different purposes of research. Discuss 3 major common purposes of research. They are in your study guides, dear students. So please study them, know them, so that you'll be able to discuss them. When we say discuss, remember you are expected to give a clear description. You are expected to argue, pointing out the positive as well as the negative features. So prepare, dear students, and make sure that you are able. The other question is data analysis. It's actually a statement first. Data analysis is a process under which a researcher begins with a large body of information and must sort and categorize it and gradually boils it down to a small set of abstract underlying themes. Now the question says, describe ways of data analysis according to qualitative research. Dear students, be able to describe these ways. When you prepare, as you prepare for examination, be able to describe these ways. The next question says, mention and analyze the research dimension of Merton. Remember, Merton have 5 research dimensions. You are expected to know them. You are expected to be able to analyze them. When we say analyze, we are actually expecting you to examine information in details and how these 5 dimensions are related to each other. The other question that you need to be able to answer is on data correction. Remember, you don't just stand up and start gathering data. You need to prepare for it. Therefore, in your study guide, go through carefully steps that one need to consider when planning for data correction. There are 6 if I'm not mistaken. So go through them carefully so that you know that before I go and correct data in the field, this is what I need to prepare on. As you are doing educational research, it involves a lot of reading. And we are not just talking about reading in general. We are talking about critical reading. So, dear students, you should be able to explain what critical reading entails. So when one say they are reading something critically, what does it entail? What does critical reading of an article entails? What does it include? So you should be able to answer that question as you prepare for your examinations. You should also be able to define the term critical engagement. You should be able to explain the steps required in critical evaluation of an article. There are 3 if I'm not mistaken, but you need to go through your module so that you find out how many are they, and then you should be able to explain them. You should also know the steps for formulating the educational research problem. There are about 6 if I'm not mistaken. So you should be able to critically discuss the steps of formulating an educational research. You should be able to identify the purpose for each step, and you should be able to identify the role of each step. So you must know all the steps. You should be able to identify the purposes of these steps, and you should be able to explain the roles that each of these steps have on research. And then the next one is on research proposal. Remember, one of our learning outcomes of this module is that you should be able to write a research proposal. A research proposal is a very important stage of research. So as you prepare for your examination, dear students, you are expected to know how to define the concept research proposal. You should also be able to discuss its importance. Why is research proposal important? And you should also know the components. Because as you discuss the importance, you need to know what are the components. Dear students, when you prepare for your research, you might decide to use questionnaires. Johnson and Christensen, 2008, describe the principle of constructing a questionnaire. Now, you should be able, as you prepare for examination, could be the May examination, it could be the August examination, it could be your November examination, you are expected to be able to mention and describe the principles that are useful when evaluating a design questionnaire. So you don't just design a questionnaire and then you go in the field and then you give it out. You actually need to evaluate your questionnaire and make sure that your questionnaire will be able to answer your research questions. There are 9 principles. So you need to know all those 9 principles. You should be able to mention them, and you should be able to describe each and every principle. The next question is on formulation of an educational research problem. Critically, discuss 6 steps in formulation of an educational research problem as stipulated by Kumar 2005 and Marie 2007. So here, you are expected to identify the purposes of each step as well as the role of each step. For you to gain the marks, you must be able to identify. So you are discussing, you are identifying, and you are identifying the purposes, and you are also identifying the roles. You should always be careful when you come across the questions and make sure that you answer all components of the questions, because if you miss out one of the components, you might lose marks, which is not good. And then one of the components of a research is literature review. Now, you are expected to know the functions of literature review. So remember when we were talking about the concept, we talk about you should be able to define what a literature review is. So it's not enough just to know how to define it. You should also be able to give the functions. Why do we do literature review? What is the significance of a literature review? So you need to know that. Go through your module and study them and try to understand those functions. Dear students, you should also know the subheadings of a research study. So when you are preparing your research study, what are the subheadings? There should be subheadings so that your work can have cohesion. So you need to know the subheadings for your research study. So dear students, prepare thoroughly on those questions. I'm not saying all these questions will be asked only in one examination. They might be asked in your May examinations, they might be asked in your August examination, or they might be asked in your November examination. Therefore, you must prepare on all these questions so that whichever question that might come up in your examination, you are able to excel in it. You are able to answer it and to answer it well. Let me remind you that these might not be the only questions. Therefore, you still need to study. You still need to go through your study guide carefully, and you still need to understand the content of your study guide, and you still need to keep in mind the learning outcomes of your module. Important notes. Dear students, you are expected to answer all the questions. So you are not going to choose some and leave out some. You will choose all the questions, you answer all the questions. Avoid leaving blanks. Dear students, when you leave blanks, you will lose marks unnecessarily. Study thoroughly all the presentations that I have given you. Go through the presentation carefully. Study thoroughly everything that I have said. Go through your module carefully and prepare for your examination and try to answer all the questions. Dear students, read widely. Do not confine yourself to the study guide and this presentation. As I said already, these are materials and guidelines that are meant to help you to make your study more easy. So they are meant to ease your study. However, they are not the only materials that you go through. Therefore, dear students, read as widely as you can. You gain more by reading more. Don't confine yourself on this presentation only. However, do not ignore the presentation. Go through this presentation as well. During the examination, you are not expected to give references. We understand that you have read widely, and therefore, you might not remember where you got all your answers. So during examination, you are not expected to give references. Therefore, do not give references. However, in your assignments, we expect you to give references and to write them correctly, since whatever materials you are copying from is nearby you. So in your assignments, you are expected to give references. However, in the examination, as I said earlier, we have read widely from different sources. Therefore, we do not expect you to give references. Let me also remind you that in the examination, try to read the questions carefully. Don't rush through your question paper. Read the questions carefully. If the question have two components, if they have state and discuss, make sure that you have answered all two components of your question so that you don't miss out marks unnecessarily. Dear students, this has brought us to the end of our presentation. I wish you all the best in your studies. Should you need my help, you should call me at 081 47 44 647. 081 47 44 647. Good luck.